Alright, guys. I didn't want to do this, but I jumped into a rabbit hole. Graham Hancock. This is a very small YouTube channel, so you're probably not seeing this. But in the off chance that you are, I think I have some advice for you. And I'm going to start with, I am not an archaeologist. I have never claimed to be an archaeologist. I will never claim to be an archaeologist, but after watching Ancient Apocalypse Season 1 and Season 2, I was very intrigued, and they are very well done. So I want to be very clear, this is not a takedown video. This is not a video here to bash on you. This is not a video to bash on your ideas, because I think you might actually have a really solid idea. And I want to help you. Because what you're lacking is not an idea. You have a very, very good idea. And you are fueling other people to push this idea, which is not a bad thing. However, after I watched Ancient Apocalypse, then I watched Ancient Apocalypse Season 2. Again, I highly recommend everyone watch that docu-series. They were not bad, so I'm going to try to give you the most concise advice from a non-archaeologist as I possibly can. And I think if you can just follow the methodology a little better, you might actually have something, but I need you to break it into two things. What is your motive? Is your motive to have the scientific community actually accept what you're saying and push forward with your ideas? Or is your motive just to sell books? And this is not for you to answer to me. You do not need to make a response video. Again, you're probably not even watching this. But for the people who are watching this, if you are fans of Graham Hancock, or if you are fans of other people like Philip Ziba, and all these other fun people who even call themselves fringe scientists or fringe archaeologists, you don't need to be on the fringe. Science is about being on the fringe. We want ideas that challenge everything. Every scientist wants to be a part of that next big discovery. They want to be a part of that thing that breaks the framework of our entire understanding of our history, of our world, of everything if we could, right? So why are you guys getting pushback from the scientific community? Well, I think I have it figured out, and this is the reason why you do want to watch this, is because I'm not an archaeologist. I am not a part of any archaeological community, but I am a science person. Science is what binds all of us really together. I mean, there are famous scientists throughout history that are more famous than their own kings, even than their own kingdoms. So, how do we help you get your idea further? It's actually quite simple. It comes down to the scientific method. You can make any claim that you want. Once you make a claim, generally your claim is going to come from an observation. And Graham, you have a lot of years of amazing observations. You have gone around the entire world more times than I can blink an eye. And that is something very special. You have the observations. That's great. That's step one. And that, for a lot of people, is actually one of the hardest parts. You know, getting money to travel to Egypt, getting money to travel to Southeast Asia and to South America, that's amazing. And you have something there, and you need to own that. The next step is you need to find a question through your observation. You know, from what I can gather, your kind of claim, and again, I'm going to try to strongman you here, give you a stillman argument. It sounds like your claim is that humanity is a species with amnesia. When I was in high school and I had taken a history class, that's exactly what my teacher said. A lot of history has been forgotten to time. I don't know if anyone else has heard a phrase like that. History has been forgotten. Nobody's going to fight you on that one, Graham. We are definitely a species with amnesia. I mean, we have a species as Homo sapiens sapiens that goes back at least 300,000 years. And again, I'm not even a biological anthropologist. I like it. It's cool. But I mean, now there's new discoveries of different hominins of our own genus that go back even further. So are we a species with amnesia? Yeah, absolutely. So no one's going to fight you on that claim. Are we a species that forgets our own history? Yeah. That's why archaeologists have a job. So I'm going to just say, Graham, I did you a favor. I watched your documentaries. I even subscribed to your YouTube channel. I listened to you talk. I even had the chance to watch people who are in support of you, who came out with their own observations in support of your fringe ideas. I don't even want to call my ideas fringe ideas. I'm going to call them your ideas because they don't have to be on the fringe, right? Because again, I'm here for you. I'm batting for you. You just need to fix your methodology, right? I did watch some Joe Rogan podcasts that have either mentioning of you or with you on there. And I even watched the debate between you and Flint Dibble. And that was a fun debate. It was long. I don't normally watch a lot of podcasts, so when I jumped into that one, boy, was that a long debate. And you guys both did really well. You know, Flint made some really good points, and you made really good points. You know, then I even watched your rebuttal video, so no one can claim I did not do the due diligence to let you guys kind of make your claims, right? I watched Flint's channel where he talked about the debate. I watched your rebuttal video to Flint's evidence, where you called to question some of his evidence. Then I even went down the rabbit hole of the internet, and the people who were on the papers that you quoted said that Flint got him right. I've been back and forth. This doesn't have to be a fight. Because again, both people can be right at the same time. So how do we extrapolate the data from the evidence? And why do we even care? Why do we push so hard? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today. It all comes down to a mountain of evidence. It's about your claim, right? You make your observation, we did that. You create your claim, and then, according to you, you believe that, or your idea, your hypothesis is that there is some large group of people for which we don't know anything about who kind of inspired the progression of our species to have engineering, and this is why we see overlap in pyramids and art styles. We see overlap in possible tool making, and we see overlap in kind of like architecture, right? Hopefully I'm kind of summarizing it that this was a worldwide group of humanity, like members of humanity that traveled around the world and independently taught people in Asia, South America, North Africa, and even South Europe, and some island to kind of have this basic knowledge, if I'm correcting you right. Now, again, make a response to me, Graham, if I'm getting you wrong, right? And essentially, once this group of people traveled around the world, taught people how to create agriculture, engineering, even potentially weaponry, right? Maybe even written language. That'd be kind of cool. They went extinct. But we see echoes, ripples from their effects to this day. So that's a great claim, and that would require great evidence. So I'm going to show you an example of the scientific method, and I'm going to make a claim. Now, preface, I actually do not believe what I'm about to say. And then I'm going to dissect my own claim, and then I'm going to do the same to yours. And today, I'm going to make a claim of a prehistoric tooth fairy. All right, so for my claim, I'm going to claim prehistoric tooth fairies. And the reason why is we have this chunk of rock we call matrix. And right here, if you see, there is an actual crocodile tooth stuck in this rock, which is an aquatic animal, right? I believe this is a Morrison formation, so that might be Amphicodylus or some other goniophlid. For you paleontology nerds, you'll get that. Okay, and then this right here is a fragmentary Allosaurus tooth. Now, that's two really cool things found in one chunk, right? So my claim is this is actually a collection site for a prehistoric tooth fairy. More evidence of this is other teeth are routinely found, like this possible Sarcosuchus tooth from North Africa, okay? And this is actually a cast. I got to meet the real one, but this is a very large Carnotaurus tooth right here. So why is it we find more teeth than we do anything else in the fossil record? Well, it's because of a tooth fairy. Now, this prehistoric tooth fairy puts them all in one spot, and sometimes it gets fossilized. And it's not just this one. paleontologists have been finding teeth all over the entire world. So that must mean there is a prehistoric tooth fairy. So if we're seeing teeth collected in deposition sites around the entire world, is that not a reason to think that tooth fairies lived in the middle of the Mesozoic? Or we need to create something called a null hypothesis, which means if I want to make a claim for this prehistoric tooth, then I need to create a null hypothesis if I want to be accurate. If I want people to take me serious, right? So another null hypothesis is that these all came from members of the group Sauropsida, which is reptiles, right? Dinosaurs are still reptiles. Birds are still reptiles, right? And we're going to actually talk about that in a little bit as another quote-unquote fringe idea. So the null hypothesis is that reptiles shed their teeth or lose their teeth, and they sometimes deposit them in waterways that get kind of swamped up, and the currents actually collect small biological materials into one spot, and it kind of creates a fossil cache of small kind of microfossils like teeth. Now, how would I disprove that? Because at the same time, I have to disprove my null hypothesis while proving my original hypothesis. And a good scientist does not always try to prove their hypothesis. They try to disprove their hypothesis. And if they cannot disprove their own claims, then their hypothesis has a lot more validity. So simultaneously, I need to look for evidence that's going to push my tooth fairy claim into one direction. Are there other small fossils in there? Is it associated with water? Maybe there's chunks of wood that was also collected at the same time as these small things. Is there small shells? Is there fish fossils? Is there anything that would indicate to me that's collecting areas in a deposition site? But if it's only teeth, maybe that helps. Maybe I'm going to dig through this matrix and look for a little magic wand. Maybe I'll dig through this matrix and look for pixie fairy dust. I can look for other evidence that supports my claim. Or I can also look for evidence that disproves my claim and disproves my null hypothesis. And whatever one is left standing is kind of the winner. Now, Graham, I'm going to come back to your idea now. So you can make any claim that you want. You need the evidence. And you have to be cautious on your evidence. You don't want to cherry pick. Right? So I'm going to just say it kind of comes back down to your motives. While I was watching Ancient Apocalypse, while I was watching your debate with Flint Dibble, you made something that caught my eye. A claim that caught my eye, at least. And your claim was that this is something that archaeologists do not want out. They do not want this. They do not want that. The archaeologists do not like this. Archaeologists don't like me. They don't like this. And you made a lot of claim about archaeologists. And if they're being rude to you, that's not okay. But I need to kind of emphasize something. I used to work at a zoo. I used to work at an aquarium. I've worked at 3 different museums. I run my own education company. I even wrote my own book about prehistoric crocs, which is on Amazon, guys. I'm just joking. That would be a shameless plug for my own products that teach really good paleontology and zoology and scientific methods that may or may not be illustrated. But this is not a plug for a book that I may or may not have written to support all right, jokes aside, it's about your methodology and your claims. See, as I worked at an aquarium, I've had adults, I've had children, I've had everybody in between all come up to me with their wild ideas. And they were fun, they were great, but I did not have the time of day, and nor was it in my job duty to listen to all those people. I have a life. I have my children, I have my own things going on, writing books, right? I don't have time to listen to everybody who gives me an idea. What I will listen to is if you publish into a scientific journal, because that's where I'm reading. But the scientific journals are strict. They are very strict, and how you publish into them is very challenging, and I'm going to get into why. Because if I want to claim that there's a tooth fairy, that goes against the current idea, which is okay. It's allowed to go against the current idea, but I need enough evidence that supersedes the current status quo. That's the standard. Why? Why do we have to be so strict, so stringent, so tight on the scientific method? Again, I was watching Ancient Apocalypse. It's a great docuseries, but I immediately saw an issue. You were only doing correlational stuff. You were only pointing out the stuff that matched. You were only identifying the things that supported your claim. And that could be evidence, right? And so, again, that's not going against it, but you don't want to be cherry picking your data points. Because, again, you need to create a null hypothesis. For example, a good null hypothesis for your hypothesis would be that human beings did actually all share a recent common ancestor, the out of Africa hypothesis. And with the out of Africa hypothesis, chances are we did kind of have some basic rudimentary understandings of our world around us. I mean, if I were to take a bucket of sand right now and dump it out, it will kind of form a natural pyramid. And so it's not even the most genius engineering design. It's just kind of logical based off gravity. So you need to account for just basic natural formations. You need to account for the differences. But I'm going to define null hypothesis for you, okay? And this will be really good for you Bigfoot fans or you Sasquatchers out there, which I'm actually going to do a separate video for you guys too. But a null hypothesis is a logical or rational alternative explanation for the evidence that you're collecting. A rational or logical explanation that is plausible that could explain some of the things that you're seeing as evidence. You need to disprove any other explanation. And I need to be very clear on that. If you want scientists to actually take you seriously, in your own work, you need to disprove any other option. And you need to start from the evidence up. You never start with the idea and work the way down, because you're not letting the evidence speak for itself. If you start with your idea from a top-down approach, you are only going to cherry pick the data that you like. And that I need to be very clear on. No scientist will ever take anything you say seriously if you start with the idea and work your way down. I'm going to tell you a little story of a German meteorologist, and I think you know where I'm going with this. Alfred Wegener in 1912 proposed the idea of the continents moving. That was fringe science. Other scientists did notice some things, but they believed that there was maybe some swelling or uplift of different types of rock formations that created different looking continents that explained why certain animal fossils were found in certain places that made no sense. But how dare a meteorologist come in here and tell us that this giant rock is moving? And he only had two correlational ideas. There was matching fossils from, say, North America and Africa, South America and Africa, parts of India and Africa, right? We saw matching fossils, and the continents kind of looked like a puzzle piece. So his idea was they were once all put together, what would form something like Pangaea. It was not originally accepted because he only had 2 points of lines of evidence. Was the geological world mean to him for saying no to your idea? Or to his idea, not your idea. You're not Alfred Wegener, okay? No, I do not think they were being rude by denying his idea. And in fact, sometimes a good friend in the scientific world will actually go against you. You do not want people who are like, good job, buddy, you're doing it right, when you're not. And I'm going to explain why here in a little bit. I'm going to tell you another story. Since Darwin's day, we have Thomas Huxley, who kind of started noticing some similarities between birds and dinosaurs. Other scientists definitely had seen it as well. And so it has been long hypothesized that birds came from dinosaurs. John Ostrom, I don't know if you recognize that name. Graham, I don't know if you even like fossils. Will you let me know if you like fossils? Because then we'll be friends. Because I like anybody who likes fossils. But John Ostrom and his team discovered Deinonychus, which was actually the inspiration for the Jurassic Park Velociraptor. Originally, it was going to be called Velociraptor montanensis or Montana. Something Montana. I can't remember, to be honest. And I'm not even fully scripting this because I wanted to be candid. That I'm just doing this to help you out. And if you feel like I'm here insulting you, please don't. No, I do not believe, by the way, that your idea is as silly as a prehistoric tooth fairy. That was just an example. Okay? I do not think your idea is ridiculous like that. That was meant to be ridiculous, okay? After John Ostrom discovered Deinonychus, a large dromaeosaurid from North America, he strongly jumped into the camp of birds definitely came from dinosaurs. The similarities were just so hard not to notice. But his critics were claiming something in biology we call convergent evolution. Is it possible that the similarities we see between that animal and birds, Deinonychus and birds, is just convergent evolution? And so it wasn't fully accepted yet. So even though that hurt John Ostrom's feelings that yes, he wanted it to be fully accepted by the scientific community, did that stop him? And should your critics stop you? No, you should keep going, right? Just like John Ostrom kept going. And he made a prediction. He made a prediction that said, we are going to find non-avian dinosaurs with feathers. And once we find a non-bird in the fossil record with feathers, this will be the nail in the coffin that confirms all of the anatomical structures that we're seeing in dromaeosaurids. It wasn't until many, many, many years later, when Ostrom had Alzheimer's, when one of his friends came up and showed him images of Sinornithosaurus. And in the mint, man, I need more caffeine. And despite him having Alzheimer's, in a moment of clarity, he was able to look at that image. And I wasn't there, and I only heard the story, and there might be a little bit of embellishment going on, but anyone who was there could tell you that he was very overwhelmed when they showed him the pictures of Sinornithosaurus. Sinornithosaurus was one of the best, most well-preserved non-avian dinosaurs discovered with feathers. Some people claimed he started crying because he was validated. He was finally shown to be correct. And at that moment, moving forward, it had to be accepted that they did share an ancestry. Now, does that mean the discovery of Sinornithosaurus wasn't just as stringent? No, they had to prove that it wasn't collagen fibers. They had to prove it wasn't plant materials. They had to prove it wasn't decaying biological materials. They had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was still feathers, and they did. And they used amazing technology to do so. That's still going on today. But once they were confirmed to be feathers, and John Ostrom got to see, he was vindicated. It made him cry because he put the science all out there. But see, Graham, what you need to do is let the evidence speak for itself. You need to disprove all your potential null hypotheses. You need to create null hypotheses. You cannot just cherry pick the data you want. You have to look at the data, all of it. Right? I was watching one of Philip Ziba's videos, and they were in South America, and there was these steps. And then there was a claim that giants made these steps. But yet, if you just look more at that exact same site, there are small steps right next to them, right across the valley. The same steps are there being used as farms. People around the world have been using this form of farming to collect water and to reduce erosion. And on the other side of the mountain that these steps were leading to, there's no steps. And there was a doorway that's only fit for a human. So all of these other things would actually go against the claim that it was meant for a giant, right? But that poor Philip Zebo was only looking at the evidence that supported his claim, and he wasn't looking at the evidence that went against his claim. A good scientist needs to go against their own claim. But again, if you're not here to convince scientists, then keep going where you're going, keep writing your books, but I don't want you to complain that scientists aren't taking you seriously. And there's a reason why. And this has all been boiling up to this one point. It has to be hard. It has to be 100%, because there are people who are trying to take this down. And in your own words, when you were debating Flint Dibble, it got to a point where you were asking Flint, has there been enough digs? And again, Flint Dibble made some good points in there, and I like that he was using the food approach and using pollen. Paleontologists use pollen deposits all the time in new enough materials, right? That was a really good thing, right? Plants, seeds, pollen, all great things. You brought up good points. He brought up good points. But in there, you are pushing one point. Have enough people examine the coastlines. Have enough people examine the Sahara Desert. Have enough. And Flint was saying, we've done a lot. We've done a lot. And you know what? This is one of those moments both of you were correct. Two things can be true at once. Yes, it is true. People have surveyed a lot of the Sahara, and there's been a lot of dig sites and a lot of amazing discoveries. So Flint was not wrong by saying we've done a lot. But you are also right by saying, have we done enough? And if Flint wasn't stuck by saying we've already done a lot, I think Flint would agree you could always do more. It's never a bad thing to do more science. So no, I'm going to say there haven't been enough. We need to go dig more. But I have a problem with what you've been doing. And Graham, again, I hope you can tell I have been doing everything within my power to give you the fuel you need to understand I am not here making fun of you. As a non-archeologist, I feel like I am in the best position here to guide you on the scientific method. I was watching your Ancient Apocalypse, and I could tell I was missing a lot of information. What were you not showing me? I needed more. And maybe if you showed me more, I would be more inclined to just jump on board. And I do not dislike your idea. And I'm not even saying it's wrong. It might be right. And you were right to ask, Flint, did we do enough? And Flint should have said, no, we need to do more. But here's the issue. Find me the money. People are not going to go in the middle of the Sahara Desert for free. It's dangerous. In fact, one of my favorite paleontologists in the entire world changed my life forever. Read a book that talked about his discoveries in Africa, from Carcharodontosaurus to my favorite animal, Caprasuchus, to start rediscovering and repopularizing Sarcosuchus. The Sahara Desert is a dangerous place, and it requires a lot of money to go out there. If you are trying to make archaeologists look like bad guys, are they ever going to get enough money to go out and do the discoveries you need to go find evidence that might actually support what you're doing? The more they dig, the more evidence you can use. All you have to do is read all of the academic papers that come out and cite your sources saying, hey, this person found that, this person found this, that person found this. And all you have to do is put all that together saying that is evidence. But those people will not be able to collect that data if you are making it harder for them to get funding by calling them bad guys, doing bad science, only stuck on maintaining the status quo. The only people I have ever heard claim scientists want to keep the status quo do not know the scientific community. We love the idea of pushing the envelope. We love the idea of changing the status quo. We just have rules we have to follow. So help us. Help archaeologists find the materials you need. I could not imagine an archaeologist who would not want to put their name on a paper that discovered an entire missing civilization. A worldwide civilization older than anything else we can imagine. That makes no sense. I don't think there would be an archaeologist out there that, if given the chance to find real data, to make a real claim on a real scientific paper, they'd say no to it. Like Alfred Wegener, once he came up with the idea, his mountain of evidence for continental drift was not high enough. So he went back, he did the work, he talked to other scientists who eventually started helping them collect data. And they eventually got support from other scientists because the idea had some validity to it. And eventually, when enough scientists were crawling around our giant rock we call Earth, looking for data, they finally found it. And now continental drift is an amazing theory. And it started with an idea that was on the fringe. But the difference is, they started with the data and went to the conclusion. You cannot start with the conclusion and just try to find data to support it. It's not how it works. And it all boils down to this. Scientific world is always under fire. There is always going to be a group of people who do not like what you have to claim. In 2005, Kitzmer versus Dover, a court case that rattled the academic world, because for the first time somebody tried to pitch a religious idea as something that could supersede or at least be taught alongside evolution. See, our civilization requires the most cutting-edge technology, the most advanced sciences. It requires critical thinkers who are constantly pushing the envelope so we can be more competitive than our potential enemies. And so when weird ideas like intelligent design are being proposed to be taught alongside other sciences in public schools, it was only because of the stringency, the absolute most strict data collecting, evidence supporting, null hypothesis destroying processes that the scientists put themselves through for so long that evolution survived that fight. Evolution won the day because of how strict the scientific community was. They tested. So the evidence had to speak for itself. And the nice thing about evolution is more groups of religious peoples have tried to disprove it than almost any other scientific principle. And what they don't realize is the more you try to disprove something, the more science you're doing. Because that's all scientists are doing anyway. But it's that stringency that kept the credibility in the field of the scientists. So if you want to put your idea forward academically, you're going to have to do some stuff. You're going to have to stop bashing on archaeologists. It's not a popularity contest, it's science. And if your idea has some validity, you should be able to get some archaeologists on your team, and they should be able to start gathering evidence that gets more archaeologists, and eventually you're going to create an entire team of people crawling all over the entire world, gathering evidence for you. And then you would have potentially enough mountain of evidence. And with that mountain of evidence, you might be able to make a publication. But here's some things you need. Okay? I even made a little mental list for you as I was watching your documentary. Humans have one really amazing thing. Right now, I follow an amazing channel called Gutsit Gibbon. Erica does a really good job of summarizing some really cool scientific papers that come out. And we know that humans like to play around. There is a lot of evidence for people hybridizing with other hominins. And so I would like to see how maybe the genetics, maybe you need to bring on a team of geneticists that try to decipher if there was a worldwide population, because I can guarantee, now this is supposed to be a family-friendly channel, so I'm trying to figure out the nicest way to say it. There should be genetic evidence of prehistoric peoples kind of playing around and making other prehistoric peoples, because humans are kind of funny that way. We're like bonobos. And there's going to be a lot of babies with a lot of genetic material, if you know what I mean. Keeping it family friendly. There should be genetic evidence. In fact, there's been a lot of claims where I live of a certain faith, and people who know my channel probably know what state I live in, or around at least. And this particular religion in our area claims that Native Americans came from the Middle East, like Jerusalem and Israel. And so there was actually a team of people from multiple universities who tried to test that claim. And they tried using DNA. And they also used language. And they also used art and engineering. And everything was saying the same thing. The genetic data said North Asia origin. The language and arts all said North Asia origin. And there was zero indication whatsoever of any major contribution of Native Americans coming from anywhere but North Asia. That was good science because they tested someone else's claim, right? So I would like to see how your worldwide population affected the genetics of humanity. That would be a really good way to go. Does the DNA support it? If they were traveling around the entire world, is there a language similarity? Is that because you show similarities in art, but there's also limitations in the mediums, right? Sculpting rock can only go so far. So because of another null hypothesis would have to take into account limitations of the medium for which they're using art with, right? But I would like to see the species of plants. You know, if they're moving around the entire world showing cultivation and agriculture, you know, corn came from North America and potentially South America. Do we have corn in Egypt? Do we have corn in Australia? Do we have corn in Asia? You know, there's like poppy and marijuana and all these other plants that people have cultivated, you know, around the entire world. You know, do we see those moving around? Because people aren't just going to take only one direction. They generally go back and forth. Look at the colonization of North and South America. The second people came over here, they were taking chocolate and other herbal stuff out of South America into the New World of Europe. And it changed everything. So those kind of goods are not just a singular transit location. It's going to go back and forth. Do we see evidence for corn in Europe prior to anything moving back and forth? You know, is there similarities in language? They're going to have to talk to each other. If they're teaching people around the entire world with this worldwide population, there's got to be some type of universal language. Do we see any connections in language? Maybe bring someone who specializes in languages onto your team. You got to start thinking outside of what's just similar and actually looking for real things. But another thing you have to do is you have to know all of the science that you're trying to disprove. When I was working on my bachelor's degree, everybody had to take their English classes. And in English, we had to write persuasive essays. And a huge chunk of a persuasive essay is talking about what the other belief system is, and then talking about why your belief system is more correct. So if you think there was a global population of human beings that was intercontinental and transitory, then you have to explain why people might not believe that and answer all their concerns while giving your evidence. It isn't just, oh my gosh, they don't believe me. It is, I have to answer their questions prior to them coming up with it, which means you have to have an understanding. You know, I've taken a lot of geology courses, and I'm not going to claim to be a geologist, but how they're talking about some of those rock formations, I have seen them form. I've seen rocks that were one way for many, many, many years, and then a decade later, I went back to go visit it, and it was broken into a straight line from freeze fracturing. So you need to learn the geology. You need to learn everything else so you know what's going to be claimed against you. And there's much more you can take into account, but you have to know what their foundations are so you can account for them. And so with that said, Graham, I don't hate you. In fact, I actually kind of like you. You're charismatic, you're well-spoken, you travel the entire world, and I think you might have something here. You just need to work a little harder on your methodology. But if you do not care about the scientists adopting your hypothesis, then stop trying to convince the scientists. Stop trying to convince everyone else that yours is as equal to the scientists if that's your goal. But if you do want to convince people that your idea is just as valid as the other stuff, or if you want to convince scientists to accept it, you have to do a lot of work. Create null hypotheses, disprove or attempt to disprove your own claim. Look for things that might go against it. Understand the framework of everything they're doing. But again, if you want other scientists out there making discoveries, you can't make it harder on them by bashing on them, by sitting there saying you're the poor picked on person. Everybody in science is being picked on until they can show a mountain of evidence so great that you have no other reason but to accept it. That way, situations like the Kinsmer versus Dover case don't come back to bite us because we didn't do good science. It has to be strict. With that said, Graham, I appreciate you. If you listened this far into a video, I do not like long videos. I do not like making long videos. Okay, I think my cat just got into something. Anyway, Graham, I like you. I appreciate you. Let's go do some real science together because you have a lot of potential and you're a pretty cool guy. And if anybody's going to be rude to you on YouTube, that's on them. You can't let them get to you. But if they have honest feedback for you, I listen to it because even though it hurts, feedback is actually where you start in the scientific world. I think that's a good place for all of us. If anyone else enjoyed this, go ahead and tag Graham Hancock in this, Philip Ziva, any other person who considers themselves on the fringe, and let them know that I don't hate them. They just need to do better work. But guys, go ahead, go below, hit that subscribe button. I'm a small channel, but if Graham could watch this, the world will be a better place. Thanks so much, guys, and have an awesome day.